Good morning and welcome to the November 2nd, 2023 meeting of the DC Historic Preservation Review Board. My name is Marnique Heath, the chair of the board. Public notice of this WebEx meeting and participation instructions have been emailed to the project applicants and the HPO mailing list and posted on the Office of Planning website. The meeting is live streamed and archived on the Office of Planning's YouTube channel. Please be aware that if you're watching on YouTube, you will not be able to provide testimony. Those wishing to provide testimony must register in advance and join via WebEx. I want to ask each board member participating in today's meeting to now turn on your cameras, and I'll do a roll call to identify who's present. So we'll start with board member Auerbach. Good morning.
Morning. Board member Auerbach is present.
Excellent. Good morning, board member Beatty.
Good morning. Board Member Beatty's present.
Excellent. Board member Bell is not with us today, but I do see board member Failer. Good morning.
Good morning. Board member Failer present.
Excellent. All right. So since this is a continuation hearing from our October meeting last Thursday, I will not read the full opening statement, but allow us to get right into our agenda. We have 3 cases today. 2 have been deferred. So you'll see on the screen those 2 that have been deferred until a later date. So we'll begin with the Cleveland Park Historic District with our case at 3427 Wisconsin Avenue Northwest. Would staff like to make your presentations first?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning, Todd.
Okay, yeah, this is Todd. I'll go first for HP staff. This lot is located on Wisconsin Avenue. It's at the western edge of the Cleveland Park Historic District. It's about a block south of the Washington Ballet and across the street from the Cathedral Commons. So currently there are 2 single-family contributing houses on the lot. Both are 1920s 4 squares with Mediterranean influences. The 2 houses are each going to be rotated and moved to the corners of the lot to face the closest side streets, which are Ordway Street and Norton Place. Both of those relocations were already approved by the board last year, but neither has occurred yet at this time. So by doing those relocations, it's going to create a larger development lot fronting Wisconsin Avenue. So also last year, the board reviewed a proposal for a 3-story plus penthouse apartment for the lot in that spot. No action was taken by the board at that time, but the board was comfortable with the proposal's overall size, but had issues with fenestration and detailing. Since then, the lot has changed ownership and the property has been rezoned to allow a larger building to be built on the site. So the design before the board today is different than what was seen last year and is considerably larger. It should be noted that the 2 existing houses on the lot are still being planned to be relocated, and nothing has changed with that since the board voted on it last year. So the current proposal before you on the lot is for a 4-story plus penthouse apartment building with 23 units. It will largely fill its available lot, which is roughly a trapezoid in shape, except for setbacks to match those of neighboring buildings. This includes matching the setbacks of houses along Ordway Street and Norton Place, which was not initially planned, but was something the applicant revised after neighborhood feedback. So though the proposal is large, staff finds the overall size compatible. It is comparable in scale to other apartment buildings along that stretch of Wisconsin Avenue, including those within and outside the historic district. The building is also of a similar height and massing to historic apartment blocks in the Cleveland Park Historic District, including one located only a block to the south. Where the proposal could use improvement is in the details. I won't describe the design detail now because the applicant will do so, but among its most notable features are a series of projecting bays and large, tall windows that are multiple stories in height. The reason for the taller windows is that some of the units will have rooms that are 2 stories in height. The building will also have mostly darker materials that seem to be taking inspiration mostly from those 2 relocated houses on the lot, rather than from the entire historic district and particularly from historic apartment buildings. As a result, the proposal doesn't read as a residential building. This is important because the historic district is characterized primarily by its residential nature. The proposal looks more like an office building or a school, and its design right now seems more appropriate for Friendship Heights than Cleveland Park. So staff believes this issue can be addressed without any major changes to the building's overall shape or program and no changes to its size. Ideally, the proposal could take inspiration from other apartment buildings in the area and in the historic district to provide more clues to its residential use. This could include things like Juliet balconies, belt courses, sills, a better demarcated front entrance, or more detailing, especially on the bays and cornice. Such items are all highly prevalent in nearby blocks and in the historic district. In addition, the materials could also better relate to those found in the historic district as a whole, which could further emphasize its residential use. And in particular, the fenestration should be looked at. The windows should either be made smaller or their scale should be reduced through the use of framing. For example, see like the framing done at the Cleveland Park Library as a way to do that. So staff recommends that the board offer the applicant feedback and encouragement on how to better emphasize the concept's residential function and have it better relate to the historic district in regards to materials, details, decoration, and fenestration. Staff recommends that the board refrain from voting on the matter until after the applicant returns at a further date with revised plans. And I'll turn it over now to the applicant to explain the concept in more detail. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sunil Chabra. I'm one of the principals at One Street Commercial Properties and owner of this site. I appreciate everyone's time today and your feedback already, which is very insightful. We had purchased this lot. I'll give everybody a quick rundown and then I'll pass the mic to my architect, Rich Marcus. We had purchased this site from the previous owner developer in February of this year. And since then, we have met with the Cleveland Park Historic and the ANC several times and got feedback and further advanced the design that we are presenting today. I'm from Washington, D.C., born and raised, grew up nearby in the area, and have seen this site for my entire life. So very excited to participate in this project and hopefully build something everybody can enjoy and we'll fill the lot really well. Rich, I will pass it on to you if you want to jump into the details and go through the presentation.
Sure. This is Rich Marcus. I'm the architect. This is the cover page. It just kind of shows the orientation. This is the existing, just for a quick background, this is the existing site. So the two blocks on the front are the two existing houses which face Wisconsin. And there's small garage carriage houses in the back. And then next slide, please. So this was what was approved and it's been permitted. And this shows the two houses that are flipped 90 degrees and facing the two side streets, Ordway and Norton. And then the two carriage houses have been moved. And then you can see the larger lot in the front. So this presentation is about this larger lot. Next slide. This is the overall block, and with some feedback from the neighbors, the ANC and the Cleveland Park Historic. Originally, the building went all the way from lot line to lot line on the two side streets, but we've brought that in. The two houses that were reoriented, they actually align with the houses on each street on Ordway and Norton, and we brought the larger building on that we're talking about today. And we brought that back from the two side streets to align with those houses. Next slide. This is the lot. We've flipped it orientation on the page. The two houses are in the red roofs and the green roofs. Those are the two houses that are flipped. And this is our building. So the lot is it's kind of a trapezoid shape. We're treating this lot as a whole, so this whole development. So the two houses and the larger building we're talking about now, we're looking at providing some landscaping all around. All the occupants will share the space. There's two entries on the side street for the red house on Ordway. This is an existing curb cut. The driveway comes in, and that's its own private driveway. with its own garage. And on Norton Place, the house has one parking space, and it's a shared driveway. That's also an existing curb cut and driveway. And then the parking spaces for this building are here. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving around, but the three
We're
spaces.
not looking at your screen. so we
Okay,
can't
yeah.
see you now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. But there's 4 spaces behind the building. They're in gray there. Those are the parking spaces for the building. And the main entry, there's a small gray entry off of Wisconsin. The building has some green space all around it, and the sidewalk wraps around. This is a corner lot facing 3 streets, actually 4 streets. There's a little Idaho Avenue also. The landscape is bermed up from the sidewalk, so there's a slight grade change from the sidewalk up to the building. But this is in general the site plan. Next slide, please. This is the cellar level. The building is 23 units. I believe the previous presentation was a lot more units. At one point, we actually even had a scheme that was up to 48 units. So there's a lot possible on this lot, but the idea is that these are larger units, and we call them single family alternative units. So all of them are 3-bedroom units, except for the 2 units on the penthouse. So there's 23 units total. 21 of them are 3-bedroom, and then the 2 on the penthouse are 2-bedroom. On the cellar level, these are all on the same floor. There's 5 units of 3 bedrooms each. Next slide, please. This is the first and second floor. So these are duplex 2-story units. And this repeats. This is on the first and second floor, and the same plans repeat on the 3rd and 4th floor. So there's 8 on these 2 stories. These are 3-bedroom units, and the idea also is with the 2-story living areas, each unit has a 2-story space within it. Next slide, please. This basically repeats. It's the 3rd and 4th story. Next slide. This is the penthouse, so it's set back on all 4 sides. There's 2 units on the south side to the right. One on the south side, one in the center, and then there's common space on the left. The clear area in the back, there's a deck that wraps around the entire building, but the clear area in the back is intended for mechanical units. Next slide. Here's the facade facing Wisconsin. So we have projecting bays there in the gray color, and in each of those units, you can see on the 1st and 2nd floor and the 3rd and 4th floor, there's 2-story spaces, and those are reflected with those 2-story windows. And then, so that was going to be wrapped in a cement board with some detailed trim, and then in between is brick. So the beige areas in between the bays are brick. This wraps around the entire building, this aesthetic scheme. There's a small, next to the second bay, there's a small entry with an awning. There's a slightly darker brick for the base. The brick color comes from the 2 houses. The 2 houses are the same color brick, and the intent is to kind of play off of that and pull some of those colors in. And you can see that because of the shape of the building, it's not a full rectangle. The 2 sides on Ordway and Norton, they're grayed out on this, so you can see the emphasis on the Wisconsin elevation. So they angle back, and you'll see that on each elevation. And then on the top, the penthouse is intended to have a lot of glass and be a lighter color, so it fades back a little bit. Next slide, please. This is the rear. So the aesthetic wraps around the whole building. So it's the same idea with the bays and the brick in between. Next slide. This is the side, the Ordway side, and this is the other side. So same idea where it wraps around. And next slide, please. is an enlarged view of the front on Wisconsin. So there's the brick panel. The main massing of the building is brick. There's some soldier course on the sill and a stone sill. And then there's a small awning for the entry. The bays are cement board with some trim work. And then you can see the larger windows there and the other fenestration. And there is a darker bay, not bay, but a darker brick on the base of the building. It's kind of covered up with vegetation. The idea is that we're going to do some very nice landscaping all the way around the building and in the back and all around the perimeter. Next slide. Here's the building. You can see it's a little bit darker. And how it is feeling with the rest of the block and the buildings on Wisconsin. It is a smaller building. It's only 23 units, and when you compare it to some of the other buildings, apartment blocks, it's a bit smaller. Next slide. Just another view. You can start to see the bays and trying to keep a very simple massing of the penthouse above and push all the mechanical units to the backside. And you can start to see the shape of it too. It's not a rectangle, but sort of a trapezoid. And these bays wrap around the corners on the Wisconsin side. We actually are not showing all the trees that are there, just for clarity. There's more trees as it comes around this corner right in front. It's shown as all grass, but there's some existing trees that we're intending to keep. Next slide. It's a view from up Wisconsin. So you start to see the bay wrapping around the corner, and here you can see from the street level the way the grade is bermed up. So the sidewalk is lower and it lifts up. This is existing grade. We're just trying to keep what it is. So the building sits up a little bit from the street and from the sidewalk. Next slide. This is the opposite side on Norton Place. And same idea, you can see how the grade bumps up a little bit. Next slide. This is from down the street where you start to see some of the houses on the street and the existing house that is being rotated there with the green roof. Then you see our building. We're also looking at some of the features of the block. There's a low stone wall on the sidewalk there. We're bringing that up to the entry where the curb cut is in the existing driveway. Next slide, please. This is, we're continuing to work on this. So just to react to some of the comments that we just had, we're looking at this. This is a little bit evolved, a little bit more detail in the facade. That I haven't shown. It wasn't in the original set, but it has some Juliet balconies. We're looking at the fenestration a little closer and looking at the detailing of that, and also breaking up the windows, the large 2-story pieces of the windows. This is broken up. It's still a 2-story space inside, and the glass is going 2 stories, but it's breaking up the fenestration and putting a little bit more and making it a little bit smaller, and starting to relate to and react to some of these comments that we've been having. That's it. Also, just so everyone knows, there's an IZ component. There's affordable units. This is double what the typical affordable units are. It's a 20% of the units. 20% of the square footage of the building will be IZ. Just so everybody's aware. And that's it. Happy to take questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. A couple of quick questions, and then I'll take questions from the board. But obviously, this is a really prominent site, and we'll have visibility from all 4 sides, really. I mean, given that you have the residential behind, but the character of the sides that the new building is facing are very different. Wisconsin is certainly much different than the residential neighborhood behind. but your facades are all reading as the same. Have you thought about how your, and I know it looks like you've evolved some of the thinking, um, particularly with window detailing, but have you thought about how you might continue to evolve the character of the facade to respond to the variation in the character of Wisconsin Avenue as compared to the residential neighborhood and the houses behind you?
Yeah, that's what we're in the process of right now. And you can see, especially on this, so the 3D model is the previous version. So it doesn't reflect some of the current thinking. We're just trying to get it to a certain point before we engage in the 3D model again. But you can see here that the large window is a different scale from the smaller windows on the side streets. And we're looking at that. It is one building, and it is like you said, it's prominently viewed, and you see it in 3 dimensions. So the building needs to work together 3-dimensionally, but at the same time, as it faces Wisconsin, there are larger buildings up and down Wisconsin. As it turns the side streets, it is smaller houses going down the block. So I think it would, the way our thought process is evolving is the windows would break up a little bit more as it turns. I think aesthetically trying to maintain the same idea of the building and the feel of it as it wraps around. But the Wisconsin side might have a little bit bigger fenestration and relating to the scale of Wisconsin. And as it wraps around, I think the windows are in our thought process are breaking up a little bit more and trying to relate more to the scale of the side streets.
Mm-hmm. And you go back, this is a question for staff. Can you go back to the revised elevation? I think it was the last
It's
one.
the last page.
Yep, this one. Okay. Yeah, I think this definitely looks like it's beginning to help. I think, one of the comments that you saw from staff was about the horizontality of the character that's consistent with the character of this historic district. And this starts to do that a little bit, but have you thought of looking at, I think one of the things now that I'd say contributes to the verticality is the change in color, and specifically going to a dark material at those bays. Have you thought about other materials that would help lighten and maybe simplify? Because it's also a smaller building, as you said.
Yeah, what's nice about the bays is that it's on this facade. It is if the bays weren't there, it's a very, very long facade. So the bays start to break it up, but they are enhanced. Obviously, when you look at it, they're much more prominent with the darker tone. So we are looking at the colors also.
How
think
far do they project?
4 feet.
Okay. And is the lighter masonry all in the same plane?
Correct.
And then those bays each project 4 feet? Okay.
Correct. There's two major planes. The brick is kind of the main mass of the building, and then the bays project out.
Mm-hmm. So they would read differently even if the material was the same.
That's correct. Especially with shadow lines and
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Other questions from board members?
Yeah, Marnika's question. I do have a couple of questions for Mr. Marcus. Back on the site plan, could you tell me what the distance is? Thanks, Steve. Between the mechanical area and the house. I realize the mechanical area is much higher than it's elevated above that relocated house, but what's the distance there?
The distance between the building and the house, there's it's probably about 20, between
20 feet?
to,
Okay.
yeah, say 20 feet.
Okay. And with the way the property line, so the relocated house has an easement with the apartment building to use the driveway for their garage on Norton Place?
Correct.
That what'll happen? Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the distance between the two garages for the relocated homes in that paved
Yeah.
area?
That's tighter there.
Is it drivable?
No, not right now.
Okay.
And that wasn't the intent.
Okay. And your intent in the design for the entrance is the main building is closer to the intersection of Idaho and Wisconsin where the lead walk is, not at the center of the building, right?
Correct. And in our thought process to take that one more step, I mean, it's only 23 units, and we just didn't feel the initial thought process was not to play up the entry too much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of a smaller piece there.
Okay, thanks. Those are my questions. Thanks, Monique. For now.
Thanks, Gretchen. Did you meet with the ANC at all? I know I saw
Yes.
the letter from, I think it was the ARC.
Yeah, we met with both the Cleveland Park Historic Society twice, two presentations, and also met with ANC twice. We also had a separate meeting with some neighbors.
Okay, all right.
Marnique, this is Steve, there should be a letter of support from the ANC in the box. If there's not, we can email that to you. But
Okay.
they did send in a resolution of support.
Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't see it, but
They did have a unanimous vote in
that's
favor.
great to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any comments from them on the architecture? You got quite a few from Cleveland Park Historical Society.
Yeah, I think it was consistent. They thought in concept everything was moving forward, and they were supportive of it, and just talked about some of the same things that Todd pointed out, fenestration, and just keep working on the details.
Okay. All right. We don't have anybody registered to testify this morning, so if we don't have any further questions as a board, we'd be ready to deliberate. So I'll ask board members to turn on your cameras. I would agree with staff that this still needs more work. I think we've
I
heard
agree
from
with
staff and from the Cleveland Park Historical Society. They would also appreciate seeing this come back and seeing further refinement. I think with this, the change that's shown in this elevation, it's moving in the right direction, but I think there are more things that can be done with detailing and material changes and certainly color changes that could simplify the building, also make it emphasize more horizontality with detailing. And I don't necessarily think that the entry needs to be made that prominent. I think it's probably okay, but I'd be curious to hear others' comments generally.
I'll weigh in, being one of the non-architects on the board, but very familiar with the site. I'm fine with the siting and the massing. I agree with the comments made about the overall aesthetic, and Matt Bell, who designed the Cleveland Park Library and is obviously a member of this board but not here today, would probably cite a few different reasons why we shouldn't be taking cues from that structure for this building. And maybe I'll let Gretchen weigh in on those. But I think that there are, again, and I agree with the chair that the refined drawings are moving in the right direction. I would note that there are a couple of or several actually, sort of more period of significance apartment buildings further south on Wisconsin Avenue, both on the same side of the street going towards the cathedral and across the street from the cathedral. Obviously, the ones across from the cathedral are not in the historic district, but the ones that are on Wisconsin Avenue, I believe, are. And so there's some articulation and that might help give some cues for this project. But overall, I think I'm sort of in concurrence with the overall approach, and at this point, it's about the aesthetics.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I agree that the massing and sighting setbacks, I think all of that is appropriate. Gretchen, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I do. Thank you.
Mhm.
I I um I think that there's some good information in the guide in the capital Cleveland Park historical guidelines that would be available to guide Mr. Marcus. I think that he's trying to straddle between being contextual and modern in his design solution, and he needs to decide, the design team needs to decide, are they going to be contextual or are they going to be modern? And if they're contextual, there's a number of good contextual apartment buildings of this scale that they could model after. If they're going to go modern, then they really need to work more on scale and refining the detail. And I think at each of those apartment buildings, there's sort of an understanding of where the entrance is. It's not prominent like the apartment, some of the sort of grand dame apartment buildings, where you drive up Connecticut Avenue and those large, apartment multi-towers with a central lobby with a porte cochere. That's not the kind of thing that we're talking about for an entrance, but it does, you do need to know where to go in here. And when I look at like this elevation, I don't know, I see there's one little awning there that covers me while I'm in the rain maybe, but it doesn't really say go in the building here. It just says there's a door here, kind of doesn't say this is the entrance. And I know that they don't have a main lobby like some of those, more dramatic apartment buildings that we have in the city. I think the challenge is also that if the team is looking to go modern, I don't know that I can think of a lot of examples, especially within the context of our historic districts, that modern apartment buildings, maybe there's a few, but it's about scale and relationship to the street. It's tricky on Wisconsin Avenue because there's this car pace, but the neighborhood is definitely a foot and bicycle pace. And so I think all the elevations, to be safe, should be more about that. The view that Steve showed a bit ago when you were talking about what happens when you're around the corner, I think it's confusing maybe to tell the design team to think about the library, but I think the point to be made is that the scale and the feel and the design needs to change as you round the corner to be responsive to the adjacent properties, and reflect that change. It almost in this solution has become more aggressive as you come around this corner, right? It's sort of like when you walk in a room and the TV is too big for the room. You're like, wow, that is a big TV. When you see that, it's just those windows are so big in dimension, even with mullions and maybe even with Juliet balconies. Those windows are so big in comparison to the adjacent house that if you were out on your porch, you might feel like, wow, I'm like under a microscope here. So because of the proximity, and well, just because of the proximity and the height of the apartment building, I think you need to downplay the scale of those windows, but still design it so that when you're in those units, you have a nice view and feel like you get daylight. So I do think it's really great that this is an apartment building with 3 bedrooms. That's really needed for our affordable housing mix in the district. So I commend you for that. It is a really challenging floor plate and unit size to work with. And so and you have a little bit of an odd shaped lot. So I do commend you on that. And I think it's impressive and to be commended to propose something like that. It's desperately needed in the district to have affordable 3-bedroom units for families. But I think you need to decide, do you want to be modern? Do you want to be contextual? And in either case, both in the contextual case, there are some great apartment buildings to model yourself after, and then look at what happens as you round the corner. I do think it's also, so I'm rambling a little bit here, the rear elevation and in what we can see doesn't feel like a rear elevation. And I think that's good and should be retained because that is the front elevation to your neighbors, right? So they shouldn't feel like they're looking at the back of an apartment building when they're so close to you, especially in that relationship. And so I don't have any problem with the size of a building. I don't have any problem with the height that it is. I don't have any problem with the placement of it on the site. I just think the envelope needs not a little bit of redesign, but a lot of redesign.
Mhm. Agree with all of that, Gretchen. All right, then, unless there are any other comments, we'll conclude this case for today and look forward to seeing you come back.
Thank you. Those are great comments. Very
Thank
insightful. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, appreciate
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so much.
Sure. We're ready to move to our second case, which is 5 Walter Hoop Court, Northeast in Capitol Hill. Moira, are you ready?
I am, and I'm serving a couple of roles today, so if you'll just bear with me while I move over the panelists for my case.
Sure. Take your time.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for filling in so many roles.
That's all right. I'm happy to. I'm just not, I'm no Juliana, so I'm not quite as adept at it. So we're looking today at a proposed project for Walter Hoop Court, which is a historic stable, which clearly has been modified. So there is a rear block that was built around 1909 with some pretty significant alterations and a front addition dating from 1981, which is what you see when you look towards the face of the building. In more recent history, solar panels and a white shed-like addition have been added to the roof for which we could not find any permit history. So the applicant has acquired the property and is proposing to do a large roof deck with some enclosures and a pergola. Based on the long sight lines of the property, including a pretty direct view from Constitution Avenue, it would, what's already there is highly visible from multiple points. And the board has been very consistent in not finding roof decks on 2-story alley buildings to be compatible and has not found visible roof decks and roof additions on contributing buildings to be compatible in this historic district. And so overall, it's not a project that staff has been able to support. And we recommend that the project be found incompatible and that maybe the applicant could explore some options at the roof that wouldn't be visible, but that in transparency, that I think would be likely to be hard to achieve. And so I'll pass it to Kim, who I can see on camera, if she wants to walk through the rest of the project.
Good morning, everyone. I believe we have the designer for the renovation. So first off, so the owner, when he acquired this property, it was as is, as you see it now, with the deck, the solar panels, the small entrance to the stairwell, and what they were hoping was to be able to renovate what's there so that it could be more easy for them to access what they purchased. And I believe one of the big selling points of the property was this rooftop deck. So we're not quite sure how to go about this because, as you said, it is highly visible as it is from the neighboring properties. What would you guys allow us to do with what is there? Is there any way that we could put up maybe a parapet that is more more pleasing to the eye, or but we really want to be able to keep what we have and improve upon it? Chris, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, hi.
Hi. Um, yeah, the owner purchased the property, as you can see. Maura, if you can go back, I think one slide. Right. Those photos show what was existing when he purchased the house. Right. So, but it's pressure treated lumber, and it is becoming pretty worn. So he wanted to replace that and possibly put a pergola there. Also, the access to this roof deck is currently in a bedroom. I think the slide before that shows a spiral stair up through the bedroom. So he wanted to relocate that stair from the bedroom and put it in and extend the main stairwell up to the rooftop. That is what he was trying. The only thing that is new to this property would be the pergola. Other than that, it's just a matter of redoing what is currently there. The owner was not aware that those things weren't permitted, and that's one of the shortcomings that we're having with realtors, in that they don't know how to adequately make sure that properties are properly permitted before going to settlement on them.
To the panel, I have a question. Because I know you guys.
If you're finished with your presentation, we're gonna probably ask you questions first.
Okay.
And then you can ask your question. But does that conclude your presentation?
If we can go through, there are a couple more slides. Right, so the one on the left shows the existing footprint of what is there now. Right, and the one on the right, we're keeping the same footprint. The only thing we're doing really is extending that stair up to the rooftop. All right, next slide. So, and this shows the sight lines. The red would be of a 6-foot person, and what they would see from the alley. So that alley, that house sits kind of at a T-junction. And so from Constitution Avenue, you will be able to see a bit more of it. The only thing I can probably propose is that we increase this parapet on the front of the building, so that it is at least not visible from the alleyway. Yeah, I guess that would conclude my presentation.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do board members have any questions?
What is the overall height of the building now with the parapet that exists?
I think it's like 25 feet.
Hmm.
Do you have a follow-up, Gretchen?
No. I
Oh,
just,
okay.
this is my neighborhood, so I walk by
With the
here and I've seen
pergola,
it.
with the pergola, it's just under 35 feet.
Okay. And so the stair you said is not there today?
There is a stair, but the stair is a spiral stair that goes through the bedroom. If you go back, I think it's the second slide. Yes. So see,
So
there's
it has
a
this little penthouse.
right. Yeah. So it
Okay.
has a spiral stair going up through the bedroom to this pop-up, and we want to move it over to the
And that
to the main stair.
platform that we're seeing is existing today.
Yes.
Okay.
And was existing at time of
At the
purchase.
time of purchase in 2021.
Okay.
But we're not sure when the previous owners
Owners put it in.
installed that.
Okay. So everything that you're proposing is just exacerbating the issues that already exist here. That's the problem.
Right.
If you did nothing, you could
It
probably
would
get
just be
away with
it would be
the,
grandfathered.
not really. It's just that no one would be checking it. You wouldn't be submitting a permit for anything. And so there'd be no, I mean, somebody could report it and you could be subject to having to remove it. But in reality, you probably would, nothing probably would happen. You'd be able to continue having what you have. The problem, as I said, is that you're trying to add more to the problem, which just exacerbates the visibility, the incompatibility of what's happening on this building. So let me go back to the applicant, though. You said you had a question for us.
So I know you guys usually keep pretty extensive records.
We don't, as a board. This would be something
For the
you need,
HPO office.
if and I don't know how extensive their records are, but you would need to talk to staff about what exists and what they have access to.
So that's pretty much how we landed here. The owners purchased the property. They wanted to repair what was there, and then of course relocate that stair, and then add the exacerbation part with the pergola. Um, I'm just concerned for the owner, um, because none of us knew that none of this was permitted until we got into the permitting system to repair and alter what was there. So I'm just a little concerned for them because it's not a nice situation being sold a property that one is historic and had changes that they as the owner were unaware it was not permitted. It's just a really sticky place to be in.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not for the board. I mean, I understand your comments, but that is not a part of the board's evaluation. So regardless of what they knew or didn't know, that has nothing to do with our purview. We need to rule on this based on what we find compatible or incompatible. And we haven't gotten to deliberation yet, but I think it's clear from the staff report that what you're proposing is incompatible. And it's likely that the board will agree with that. I'll take any other questions before we move to deliberation.
Are there any redesign options available for us? Is there anything that we could do that would satisfy the board with trying to find a middle ground or a compromise where the owners could still somewhat make their repairs, but make it more compatible for the neighborhood and for the line of visibility for the neighbors? Is there any suggestions that you guys have for us, or some way that we can meet in the middle?
Ms. Preddy, I guess we would ask if you've had that conversation with Moira at staff, what your suggestions are about how you might do it. Certainly staff is very well versed in what's compatible and not within the historic district to work with you to propose design solutions for the board's consideration and review.
Okay.
I also just want to add that perhaps you might want to go back to the real estate agent who executed this transaction with you, both on the buyer and the seller side. That they haven't documented this, but it's unfortunate that your client bought this as is, right? So that gives the seller a release from anything that pre-existed, and that's a risk that happens sometimes. So that is unfortunate, certainly. But I guess I would ask you, what are the conversations that you've had, if any, with staff about, is there anything that could happen with the design? Anything you might propose to the board for us to consider?
We haven't quite gotten to that point yet. We
Well, it sounds like you should go back to
Yeah.
staff and work through
yes, we
that.
need to work with
Um,
Moira.
Yeah, I mean, we can always make suggestions based on what you're presenting us, but it is not our job to design the
Exactly.
project for you. So,
That's all. I just wanted to know if you guys had any
Mhm.
suggestions before we do go back to the drawing board.
I'm sure Moira will.
Moira's
If
great.
there is, yeah, if she thinks there's an approvable solution here. All right.
I just have a
So
question of Marnique. I have a question of
Go ahead.
you and
Uh-huh.
staff. I guess is staff asking us to have a position on what's there, not it's sort of illegally there? Do we need to?
Can you ask that again?
I
missed
guess I'm
part of that.
wondering if staff is asking us to give them any comments that we may have about what's existing there, if we think it needs to be removed, or if it could stay, or do we have any comments of that? Is
Yeah,
staff
I was
asking us?
looking back at the staff report to see if that was a part
Moira,
of
are
this,
you
but
asking us for
Moira,
that
can you
too?
clarify?
I don't that to me would fall under the purview and enforcement, which is not a board consideration.
Okay.
So thank you, I think, maybe for offering or for clarifying, but I'm not asking you to comment on what's existing, but the additions onto what is existing and what that total project would be ultimately. And it is an unfortunate situation when the
Yeah.
property was on market. Everyone who contacted me with questions about what was there and potential projects, I let them know I couldn't find any permit history for what was there and that what was there wasn't something that we could approve. But maybe those were then people who didn't move forward with the purchase of the property. I don't. I see that Beth is on, but I don't know that we ever ended up hearing from the ANC about this. Just making sure that we're ticking that box of commenting on whether or not the ANC had input on this project.
Okay. We didn't have Beth registered, but I have her letter. You said she's on.
Yeah, I don't know if she was planning to testify. I also see her on.
Okay. Ms. Purcell, were you wanting to testify?
Yes, just briefly. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. I guess we support the staff's conclusion that the project is not compatible. I tried to register. I thought I had done that. Also, we had trouble finding the staff report on Box. It's probably there, and I just couldn't find it.
It was on the website, but not in the box. It's in the box now, though.
Oh, okay. All right. But we agree with the staff's position that the project is not compatible. In some ways, this is similar to 621 Maryland Avenue Northeast that the board considered last month as far as exacerbating existing conditions that were not compatible. Anyway, we support the staff's report that the project is not compatible. And thank you for listening to our comments.
Thank you. Thank you for testifying this morning and for submitting your letter, which we do have in the box file. Does the board have any final questions for the applicant before we deliberate?
No.
All right. Then I'll I think we've commented quite a bit through the hearing, but I'm going to just make a motion that we deny the application as it's been presented to us. The applicant can certainly go back to work with staff, consult with Capitol Hill Restoration Society, and the ANC to come up with a solution that is compatible, potentially. But for the purposes of what's been submitted to us, the motion is to deny. And I'll ask for a second.
Yeah, okay, Chris has seconded. I would just add that I agree with the staff's comment that coming up with a solution, I think, is very challenging given the height of this carriage house accessory building. So, solutions like raising the parapet, I don't know that would be compatible, especially, I know there's a variety of carriage houses in that alleyway of the mid block, but none of them would be much taller than this one. This one is one of the taller. So I'm, at first blush, and looking at this, when we got the packet of information, I'm turning around in my head. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I keep saying if there is a solution.
Yeah.
I'm not certain there is, but all right. Then all those in support of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, motion to deny.
I would just add
Okay.
also that I think it's really unfortunate that this transaction happened this way with the owner, that they were not aware that this was not permitted and that it wasn't shared, that they weren't made aware of it.
Mhm. All right. And I didn't ask for any votes in opposition, but I think everybody voted in favor of the denial. So the motion carries. All right. So we're on our last case for the
I
day.
just wanted to quickly say that was my last HPRB case, and thank you guys so much for 5 wonderful years.
Oh, we voted to deny that request as well, Moira. Sorry.
Yeah, Moira, sorry.
Wait, Moira,
Wasn't part
don't
of the
leave.
motion.
Okay, I'll reverse the paperwork. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Monique. The unofficial
We
board
will-
finding. Yeah.
We will miss you,
We're
Moira.
definitely gonna miss you.
And-
I've loved working with you over the years, Moira. You've always been amazing. I'm sorry to
Oh,
see
thank
you go.
you.
So sorry to see you go.
Thank you
Maura,
so
I just met you. Where you going?
much. I'm going to the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation.
Oh,
Uh,
congrats.
Definitely stay in touch with us, Moira. We'll
Okay,
miss
thank you.
But
Let me know who's your replacement so that we could work on this project.
Okay, I will. I will pass you off, Kim. Don't you worry. I'm not gonna leave you
Thank
hanging.
you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, Moira. All right. So last but not least, DuPont Circle Historic District, 2122 P Street Northwest. Anne, are you ready?
Yes, good morning. I'm not going anywhere, so I'll be here
Very
for the
good.
long haul.
Oh, and you're stuck with us forever, Miss Brockett.
I think we've got all of the applicant, the architect and the applicant applicants online because we're a little early, but I think we're good to go. We're early. Congratulations. This is a project to add to a historic apartment building in DuPont Circle. The proposal is to the design of Ron Schneck of Square 134 Architects. And what we're going to look at is as an apartment building that's where the context has been pretty altered. There's a tall hotel construction to the east. However, on the west, there's an alley and the side of this building is fully exposed. What's being proposed is a 2-story addition on top of the 4-story existing building. It would sit back about 12 feet from the front and occupy the full width of the building. The proposal is to clad it with metal panels and have windows that align with the windows on the existing building. It's a tough case. Generally, the board has a principle that rooftop additions should not be visible or overwhelm the underlying building. And that principle is generally informed by site-specific circumstances, including the building type, its height, and the context. In this situation, this low-scale apartment building, symmetrically designed, doesn't really lend itself well to a roof addition, mostly because of the view from the west, where it's fully visible. And what we would see with the current proposal is an unbalanced top-heavy massing, which takes away from the relevance as the only remaining historic building on this stretch of P Street. However, we do think there is an opportunity perhaps to add to this building given the altered context. Either a one-story addition proposed within the same footprint would not upset the proportions of the building, or perhaps a taller addition that is pushed back further so it looks more like it's in the background and not necessarily an addition on top of this building. That has worked in the past in certain circumstances. A third option, which the applicants did partly explore, would be to create a one-story addition where it pops up over the stairs, which they want to continue to provide access to the added stories. A one-story addition over those steps, and then step up to a two-story addition that is pushed further back on the roof. Regardless, we do think that there's potential to add to this building, and we are recommending that the applicant explore other options that better respect the scale, proportions, and massing of the underlying building, and return to the board with an alternate addition solution, as we do not find that this is proportionally appropriate for the building as it's currently designed. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Before we hear from the applicant, can I just ask, it appears, I think this was set back about 12.5 feet, something like that already, as we see in this view. Were you recommending a certain distance of additional setback?
What we had discussed in before they came to the board was setting back, and you can just barely see it here. There's a little bit of a step down in the roof line. Yeah, the cursor is right there. That's sort of a spot that's less arbitrary when we're talking to applicants about where to start an addition. And we were suggesting that as a place to rise up for a two-story addition or possibly more. But the applicants, I believe, are going to explain why that 12-foot setback is important to them as it relates to the stair in their design. So, but that is the point at which we were discussing where it would be appropriate to start an addition.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so the applicant can start. I think you're muted. At least we can't hear you. I can see your mouth moving. No. Yeah, there's something. It doesn't look like you're met. Yeah, it doesn't look like you're muted.
Yeah, Ron, you're unmuted.
I can unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There we go.
You guys can hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm so sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. Board members, thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to talk about this project. And thank you very much for the meetings that we've had before this and feedback that you've given us and the opportunity to speak with you about this project. Yeah, I just wanted to introduce ourselves. I'm with the ownership group that bought the property in 2019. We're an internally managed family office based in DC. We have a number of properties in the district that we manage and own. When they bought this property and I took over management in early 2021, it was a fully leased building with office tenants. And I don't need to tell you guys about the post-COVID world, but I guess I'm doing a successful job of managing a half-empty office building at this point because we have no more office tenants. We've had a number of national brokers on this project trying to get it leased up, and now we're in the process of exploring all our options, which I will let professionals explain in better detail. But you know, we're hoping to stay on this project long after, and hope to be a part of the district. And we've met with community members or neighbors in other meetings. We've met a lot with our ANC Commissioner Jeff, who I think is here too. And you know, we feel like the property or the presentation that we're going to deliver is hopefully bringing in a lot of their feedback and the things that they would like to see also. But thank you very much, and I'm here to answer questions, but I'll let Ron and Jeff take over.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Good morning. I haven't worked with you a whole lot, Moira, but I am sad to see you go. I don't know if you're even still on the call, so good luck. I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to share design with you this morning. I'd also like to thank HPO staff for all of their assistance as usual. I guess you can just go to the next slide. Real quick, just, you know, mixed use zone, DuPont Circle Historic District. Project is entirely by right. Obviously, we're, you know, way under FAR and all of the sort of zoning constraints. Next slide, please. Just vicinity maps. You know, 2122 P Street is about 2 blocks from DuPont Circle, and it is currently surrounded by primarily sort of large non-contributing buildings. Marriott Resident Inn to the east and West Park Apartments to the west. Next slide, please. Sorry. These are just sort of existing context. I know it's got. Image 1 is a view from view of 2122 P Street from the west, about mid-block. View 2 is a view from the east along P Street, and view 3 is at the corner of West Park Apartments, sort of looking at the building and also down the alley. You can barely see it, but you can see some outlines of where the windows along the first floor of the existing building have been filled in. And image 4 is basically from, you know, from the middle of the street. Sort of real quick about the existing building. As Jared mentioned, there are empty office spaces on the upper floors. The basement contains 2 retail spaces on either side, and the first floor houses Asian 54 restaurant. Next slide, please. These are just views of the side and the rear alleys. I don't just if there are any questions about parking and trash, we just wanted to show these, but I think we can skip it for now. Next slide, please. So as we are proposing an addition that can clearly be seen from most angles, and one that, you know, we seek to complement rather than sort of juxtapose the visual patterns of the existing buildings. We're just providing a few precedent images that illustrate this approach. For example, I'll focus on the upper left. In this example, we appreciate how the building re-represents the window patterning of the existing building as the organizing principle of the addition, and by doing so, acknowledges the existing building in a way that may not have registered otherwise. And there are other examples as well. Next slide, please. And this just sort of a little bit our sort of, you know, partie of the design. We're using a similar strategy here with our proposal by connecting the fenestration visually of the addition with that of the existing windows below. And then in order to distinguish the addition a little bit, we're introducing a little bit more randomness within the window patterns, particularly on the side elevation. Next slide, please. On the P Street elevation, we did decide to sort of maintain a bit formality with the fenestration here, you know, keeping sort of more or less the same pattern of the windows of the existing building, just changing the proportion a little bit again to sort of distinguish it, you know, old versus new. Next slide, please. This is the elevation at the alley, and this shows sort of our proposed more sort of randomized window fenestration and joint pattern. And you can also see here that, you know, in terms of trying to activate a little bit of this visual pattern, we are proposing to partially expose the windows of the existing building across the first floor. Next slide, please. This is a perspective view from the west. And next slide, please. Perspective view from the east. And as you can see, obviously, because of the alley, the view from the west, the addition will be a lot more visible with the view from the east, not so much. Next slide, please. So for materials, we had a lot of really good dialogue with the community, and what we're proposing is to remove the existing paint and expose the brick underneath, except for the mural on the upper left corner. We're keeping that. And what we'd like to do then is we're proposing sort of a metal cladding system that would be in the same color family as the existing brick, and slightly more accentuated joints to give it a little bit more texture with the metal panel. Next slide, please. Oh, and there's just examples of other projects. This one is a color rendering of the view from across the street to the west, and here you can see what we're proposing in terms of the massing and the fenestration pattern, as well as sort of the color scheme. Next slide, please. Real quick section, just illustrating sort of view sheds. Basically, if you're walking along the street on the south side, you're not going to see the addition, but obviously when you get to the north side of the street, the addition, for a fair amount of it will in fact be visible. Next slide, please. This is a roof plan, and just wanted to, what we're showing here is obviously the setback of the addition, the existing rear stair and deck in the back, which we're going to be utilizing as the second means of egress, location of the condensers, pushing as far back as we can, and also we're sort of calling out the existing interior stair. And one of our strategies is, we're not dealing with a whole lot of square footage here. So what we're proposing to do is use that existing interior stair and extrude that up to the fourth floor, and that in some ways has set where the setback currently is. Just sort of real quick, as mentioned in the staff report, we have had discussions with HPO staff about alternative scenarios, and one of the scenarios that I'll just touch on briefly is that there was a suggestion of moving the setback further to the rear and going up additional floors to really distinguish it from the existing building, which we think could be nice. However, sort of from a functionality standpoint, the challenge with this scenario is as soon as we reach 6 stories, we need an elevator in addition to the second stair that would have to be in the addition, and then also would have to go down into the 4th floor and connect to the existing stair of the existing building on the 3rd floor, and it just really would not leave us with much at all sort of usable space. Sort of real quick on the other sort of 2 scenarios, the 1-story addition is just, and the owner can speak more about this, but just sort of doesn't make the project feasible. And we had looked at potentially having some type of step back. We even looked at having a notch, and the community, they sort of did not really like that design. They very much wanted the current setback to be continuous and not chopped up. Next slide, please.
Ron, sorry, the only thing I would add there, and this is above my pay grade, so the risk of getting out over my skis, the construction that would come into play if we set back and went up higher would probably be more of a burden on our existing tenants because of the construction materials that you would have to use. We would be looking at having to shut them down for a lot longer, and with the proposed set forward or setback that we were utilizing that interior staircase, we wouldn't have to use as much of that type of construction, and we would hopefully not have to disrupt them at all. But really taking advantage of that existing staircase was the goal of setting it forward. We realize we can go higher and probably get more square footage going backwards, but this is from a construction standpoint, probably where we need to be.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. I actually forgot to mention that, but yeah, so
No,
I mean,
yeah,
right
sorry,
now we're
thank you.
treating this as a 3B construction, and 2 stories is as tall as we can go. As soon as we go more than, we're already pushing the envelope. If we go any further, the whole building needs to get upgraded to a different construction type, which again affects the feasibility of the project. Thank you. Just floor plans from right to left. Floor plans of the existing basement, first and second floor, showing the commercial spaces in the basement and the first floor, and units 1 and 2 on the second floor. Next slide, please. And from right to left, floor plans of 3rd, 4th, and 5th, showing units 3 through 8, sort of again on the pushing the envelope part. So the because if we had another set of units 1 floor up, we would have to, for building code purposes, have an elevator. So that's why we have the 2-story units at floors 4 and 5. Again, thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing your input. And I think Jeff is here. No.
All right, thank you. Does the board have any questions at this time before we hear from the ANC commissioner?
Nope.
Okay. All right, then if the ANC commissioner for ANC 2B02 is on, you can make your statement.
Oh, yes. Good morning. I'm just bear with me. I'm here. It's just been a crazy morning.
Okay.
I was expecting a 10:15 start. So,
Well, it's 10:17, so now you're on.
now I'm on. Very much. Okay, documents. Okay. All right. So I'm ready here. Okay. So good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of application 23512, construction of an addition to 2122 Peace Street Northwest. I'm Jeff Ruckauer, the ANC commissioner for the location. I've also lived next door in the West Park since 1992, so I'm extremely familiar with both the building, the 2100 block of Peace Street, and the surrounding area that is my single member district. 2122 began as a residential building in 1915. It remained that until sometime in the mid to late 1970s. Prior to the current condition, the front of the building was flat with simple period fenestration on the north and western sides. There was no staircase in front. The entrance was at street level or possibly one of the bricked over doors on the west side. There were no faux bay windows on the front. There likely was street level retail, but I cannot determine where that was. I've only found one photograph in the DC History Center archives that shows the South Side block, which with a very limited view of the building, but enough to see what hint at what the previous condition was. The bar and restaurant opened in the restaurant space at the top of the stairs in 1982, and that space has continually been used for that purpose by different establishments. As the board is aware, the 2100 block of P is dominated by 4 10-story buildings. 2121P, currently the Royal Sonesta, constructed as a condo circa 1967. The West Park Apartments at 2130, completed in 1975. The DuPont West Condominium at 2141, completed in 1980. And finally, the Residence Inn Hotel, completed in 2000. 2122 was dwarfed by the Residence Inn and the West Park. Were it not for the color accents of the ground and first floor businesses on the front of the building and the Wizard of Oz mural on the west wall, it would melt into the Residence Inn's mass, hardly distinguishable to passers-by. In fact, it is already invisible to the type of small businesses that once occupied its upper 2 floors from the 1980s to the 2010s. The market for office space in Western DuPont evaporated overnight when Congressional Quarterly vacated the office building it built in the 1960s and was converted to condos in 2005. A little more than a year later, the Fairfax Deli, which had been at 2153 to 55 Peace Streets since the 1980s, closed, largely due to the dramatic loss of sustaining lunchtime business from workers at Congressional Quarterly and the various small offices dotting P, 22nd, and 21st Streets. The small associations and professional firms merged with larger organizations, transitioned to virtual models that were becoming viable with ever faster home internet, or upgrading to power addresses being delivered in the K Street corridor, new locations in Noma, or across the river. By the time the pandemic wrought havoc on every facet of life, concepts such as 9-to-5 offices, co-working, and shared suites were already in steep decline. 2122P has been unable to attract business tenants to plant long-term stakes and support the business's expenses and upkeep. This is not sustainable for the owner. Having a half-empty building also puts at risk the new restaurant tenant and the beloved bagel shop that is a neighborhood institution for nearly 40 years. I advocated for and ANC2P voted to support this application because there aren't many opportunities to create additional housing in my SMD or in DuPont. It makes no sense to have unproductive vacant space. The Commission also joined in supporting the addition built up from the current roof. This project makes perfect sense for the property, the community, and the district. It brings the building full circle to its original purpose. The project, as proposed, allows for the existing businesses to continue operating during construction. While a taller addition is allowed, it would require not only a more complex design, it would require more complicated construction to reinforce the foundation to support the greater height and loading. That could not be done with the building occupied, and the tenants would be forced to vacate. Closing the businesses, if only for a few months, would cause them considerable, if not irreparable, financial harm through no fault of their own. Preserving these businesses is a major concern and priority for me and ANC2B. Unlike 2147, 2149P across the street, which was for a 5-story rear addition from a basement level that also wanted an addition extending into the existing roof, it made sense to keep the addition set back from the P Street front. While that property had undergone facade changes before the historic district reached the block, it still retained most of its earlier and original features. Looking at a photo from 1964, the then separate buildings are still easily recognizable today. Yet even with delineation of historic and new, other than fenestration differences, the whole building being painted the same color dilutes the message of there being two distinct constructions at the site. In the case of 2122, it is radically altered and barely recognizable as it stood 50 or 100 years ago. Aside from its construction date being in the period of significance, it is difficult to justify its continuing to be a contributing building. Taking a few steps down 20 Court, one may observe all manner of unacceptable additions and alterations to the rears and roofs of buildings in the 1400 block of 21st Street that were done prior to the historic district. Farther south at O Street is the 20 Court condo, which was built in the 1980s and most definitely is no more contributing than the 10-story building. When looking at 2122 in context of the non-historic elements that dominate its surroundings, the proposed full addition arising from the rooftop with a complementary but distinguishing combination of materials and color and fenestration would be harmonious. It would also create a good balance of new versus old, especially if the exterior paint, except for the mural, removed in 2122 resumed the presumed bare brick finish of its construction era. Visual distinction and appeal of the building and surroundings is extremely important to successfully let apartments in today's market. In conclusion, I ask the board to please grant an exception to the policy of not placing additions on historic roofs because of the unique circumstances of 2122 P Street Northwest, its immediate building context, and the greater context of the neighborhood surrounding the site. Few other buildings have this particular combination of factors, and it should be recognized that greater flexibility in thinking is needed for it to evolve the building to both preserve the historic context of the neighborhood and the needs of the present and future. Thank you for letting me speak today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. And thanks for bearing with us as we're rarely early, but luckily we're ahead of schedule today. And everybody was here. Questions for the ANC Commissioner?
Just a comment to say thank you for such a well-organized and productive testimony. It's not common that we get that, and it's clear you understand what our purview is, so thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you. All right, so questions for the applicant? Any final questions? I have a couple. Can you help us understand because what you've shown is your setback, which your proposed setback, which is the 12'3". If we went back to the line where the facade begins to step down along the alley, can you remind me what that depth then becomes, the setback?
The setback would probably, I don't have it in front of me, but something like maybe 25 feet-ish.
Okay, so it doubles the setback essentially.
Slightly more than doubles, yes. And again,
Okay.
it also, and I'll let ownership talk a little bit about sort of, the unit configuration, but the other thing is, like I said, that being able to use that existing stair shaft creates a certain level of efficiency as well. And so that's, it's not like an arbitrary dimension, it's right.
Got it.
That's the interior stairs. Okay, Jared, I'll let you.
No, I was only going to add, if you look at the overhead, that the setback that would go to the notch is well beyond the staircase. So I was just going to kind of re-echo what Ron was saying. And as to the Tetris block type unit configuration that we were showing, we've had some success with that in another project that we worked on in DC, and they came out amazing, and attributed that all to Ron's creative thinking in this. So hoping to utilize that again here.
Okay, another strategy was proposed, I think, by staff, where you'd have a 12'3" setback for your 5th floor or 4th floor, and then a 25, whatever it is, setback for the top floor. Did you look at that?
Yeah, I believe we looked at that. Again, economically, if it comes down to square footage, we realized we could get more setting it back further. With that and only going up the 2 floors, I know that's not a purview for the board to look at, but at that it doesn't make a lot of financial or economic sense for us. We just wouldn't have unit sizes that made sense. After talking to people, we wouldn't end up with a unit mix that would really end up being leasable. And I'm not sure we would be able to get that back. And I believe, Ron, was that with letting the staircase come up from where it was, penetrating the roof and then going back? It was kind of another construction.
Yeah, we also had a scheme that sort of took a notch out at the corner, and I'll let Jeff elaborate. But we did present this not to the full ANC, but sort of to the subcommittee, and we did very much take the guidance of the subcommittee, and any sort of any chopping up or sort of wetting casing was just not preferred by the committee. And then with that, the infeasibility from a sort of financial perspective, we didn't go any further with those.
And that was the feedback we received when we held our community meeting in this property. We presented a number of those options, and the wedding cake or notch style didn't get strong feedback.
Okay. Do you have a question, Gretchen?
Yeah, thank you. I wondered, how are you supporting the addition now on top of the roof? Are you carrying columns down through the building? What are you proposing?
We haven't gone too far, but the goal is to keep the 3B construction. So we would keep the outside walls, and there's also in the floor plans, you can see there's a sort of wall down the middle. We would keep the bearing points the same. So we really aren't extending columns down. We would just continue to bear on the existing bearing walls. We probably have to do some footing work, obviously, because the load is greater, but we're hoping to use the existing structure as much as we can.
And so then you want to keep the front wall where it is because it bears on the wall for the stair tower?
Yes. Ideally, it'll make it a lot easier. It's a masonry enclosed stair, and so this way we can bear from wall to stair wall, and then wall or stair wall to wall. So it makes it much more, technically feasible. Correct.
And have you looked at what this will look like to the carriage house that's that's in the mid block here?
Yeah, so we talked to the owner of the carriage house, and there's a note just sort of for the record, because we did promise, one of his concerns was the look of the sort of deck slash fire escape egress stair. His only concern I believe was what that looks like. And, potentially if people are going to be out there, he wanted some shielding. So we do have a note on our drawings because we did make a promise to him that if this goes forward, we'll come up with some type of screening of that egress stair, just so there's some buffering. But other than that concern, he was supportive of the project.
All right. Any other follow-ups, Gretchen? Okay. All right. Then
I guess did you look at other cladding materials?
The only other cladding material that we looked at was it's a hardy panel product. It's called Equitone and it's textured. And the only I would appreciate some opinions on it. I think that it seemed to me that it was too much of a texture that would contrast too much with the brick, and so we went with a smooth material to sort of complement the texture of the brick. But the intention though is to have, I think having visible joint lines is essential in that it scales the cladding down a little bit. But we thought about brick, obviously that becomes sort of a weight issue, and I think that then becomes too similar to the existing building. So that's sort of where we ended up.
all right, then if there are no more questions from the board, we would be ready to deliberate, but we'll allow you to give any final statement or closing that you'd like to make before we deliberate. If you choose, you don't have to.
Just thank you again, as always. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff, also for all your help and organizing the community with us and getting all that feedback. So thank you very much for your effort.
Okay. Thanks. Is the board ready? If so, I'll ask all board members to turn on your cameras. All right. Does anyone want to start?
Yeah, I'll start a little bit.
Okay, go ahead,
if
Gretchen.
you'd like. The first thing I'd like to say is that the presentation of the precedent images, I don't think, to me, there are a series of what I would call preservation don'ts included in there on page 1.5. There are some things that are not compatible with the Secretary of Interior standards or the district's preservation law and what's given as precedent. But all that said, I think there is the possibility for an addition on top of this building. I understand some of the technical difficulties. I'm a little bit perplexed by the funding and the comment about unit sizes, because unit sizes of over 1,000 feet are not typically rentable as apartments in the mix. The trend, as I've seen it in the market, has been for smaller units and more smaller units, that people are looking for smaller footprints, not bigger footprints. But anyway, that's a debate for another case and another purview and another place. But I think as it's shown, the way this building looks and sits, I think it either needs to sit back so the front wall is at the back wall of the stair. Maybe it needs to go to the other side of the stair, or something, so that it reads like it's an addition on the back of this building with 2 stories. I could see 1 story at this height and projection, but 2 stories I think is difficult in how it reads, and its relationship to this existing building, and placement and how it fits with the design. It has a little bit of dominance because of the way this building reads as like a series of 2-story buildings, right? You've got that half grade in, half grade out, and then you've got the with the bagel shop, and then the restaurants above, and then you've got the office. So it's like a 2, 2, and a 2, and then there's another 2 on the top. And I think if it read as a 2, and a 1.5, it might be more compatible. So even if that second story were back another bay and back and landed on the back wall of the stair rather than the front wall of the stair, that might make it on the external more compatible. I realize that would change the layout of the units above and maybe below. Maybe some of the 2 stories go down rather than go up. Or maybe there are 3-story units that go in the apartment buildings. I don't know the feasibility of how that works, because I don't know anything of the interior structure and layout of what goes on in the building to do that, and I'm not their architect to think about that dimensionality. But to me, there could be an addition. I would like to see something not. The windows seem a little bit long, and institutional, or more of an office or a business use than a residential. So I'd like to see the windows have more of a head and a sill kind of feel to them, if they're going to be the solution, or it should be more modern in its appearance and color. So in addition to setting back that second story, maybe the exterior of the building, the windows, the proportion of the windows and the relationship of the windows to other residential buildings would be more appropriate rather than have them go from floor to ceiling.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was wondering, I wasn't sure where the back wall of that stair fell in relation to the change in the height of the parapet along the sidewall, but it probably doesn't matter if we're talking about the second floor, because that relationship is going to be a little bit less apparent. And the second floor of the addition, that is, that relationship is going to be a little less apparent. But I think it's worth at least having the applicant come back to us to show that solution, because I think we will find it to be compatible. And I would agree with your comment about the windows. They definitely feel more institutional as the long, slender windows. The materiality doesn't help, but I would be fine with this material if the windows had a more residential character to them. So I would recommend revisiting the configuration of the windows, the size and configuration of the windows, and the setback of the second story of the addition. Yeah, I would rather not take a vote on this today and ask that the applicant revisit based on board comments and then come back to us when you're ready. But I think that what we've talked about today, at least in our minds, we haven't seen it yet, but in our minds, appears to be a compatible solution here. So any other thoughts from board members? Okay. Then thank you all for your presentation today, and we look forward to seeing this come back. And that concludes our day.
Thank you.
Thank
A
you.
nice short one as compared to last week.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
you.
All.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.